What if I told you that a single red line is all that stands between us and change? Change is a word we hear everywhere. It's in mission statements, speeches, slogans. I mean, how many times have you said you wanted to create change? Used it in a college essay or a job application? But what does change actually mean? And if it's something we all say we care about, why does it still feel so far away? At its core, change is about transforming what is into what could be. And what is a world that can convince us that the cost of belonging is our identities. But on the other side lies what could be. And what could be is a world where we're valued and heard in the fullness of our identities. We've all heard the phrase, be the change you want to see in the world. It's a cliche, for sure, but like most cliches, it holds truth. Change begins with you, and it begins with reclaiming your identity to help build a world with you in it. So how do we do this? First, we must start by telling our stories. Because once this happens, we create space for others to do the same. And when enough of us take up that space, the world has no choice but to listen. Let me introduce myself. My name is Leena Sarhan. I'm a Palestinian American. And I want to tell you what it's meant to spend most of my life behind the red line. As a Palestinian, I've witnessed the erasure of identity in the physical sense, through force, war, occupation. But as an American, I've experienced a much quieter kind of erasure, one that normalizes a culture of assimilation. A culture that teaches us to prioritize the comfort of fitting in over the discomfort of speaking out. To illustrate this, I'd like you all to think back to a time when you felt embarrassed. Maybe it was when you tripped in front of a class, called your teacher mom by mistake, or pushed on a pull door. Now imagine if that feeling never went away. That is what it felt to grow up Palestinian in America. I was embarrassed to be Palestinian, embarrassed to claim an identity that felt like it jeopardized my ability to fit in, an identity that felt like it came with too many strings attached. Because for many of you, Palestine may exist only as a land riddled with conflict, as headlines that resurface the news every few years, or as an age-long debate too complicated to understand. And so I learned early on that to say I was Palestinian was to brace for assumptions that would follow about who I was and what I believed. Because of this, it became easier to dilute my identity. I said I was Arab, not Palestinian. I left it off of applications, too afraid it would close doors, and I avoided questions about where I was from. We live in a world that celebrates our identities only when it's convenient, when it fits into diversity posters or corporate campaigns. Beyond this, we're expected to fit in, to be present, but not to take up space. And so for many of us, silence can begin to feel like protection. But your silence is not protecting you. Your silence is holding your breath as a crisis unfolds in your homeland because speaking up feels too political. It's staying quiet when someone calls who you are complicated or acts like it doesn't exist. And it's the pause before you speak, an instinct to tone yourself down to keep others comfortable. I carried that silence with me for years, until it became too heavy to hold. On a day in October 2023, I walked to the George Sherman Union at Boston University, each step feeling heavier than the last. My palms were sweating, and my heart was pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. But I stood on a bench, looked at my peers and students gathered in front of me, and I spoke. My name is Leena Sarhan. I'm a Boston University student from Tul Karim, Palestine. I'm the granddaughter of survivors of Nakba, the catastrophe of 1948 that saw the mass forced eviction of over 700,000 Palestinians. I'm the daughter of parents who lived under the violence of occupation, and I'm standing before you today as a descendant of the Palestinian people who have been subjected to ethnic cleansing, apartheid, and occupation for over 75 years. I never knew the meaning of going weak in the knees until that moment. My legs shook so violently, I thought they would give out beneath me. But it was then that I realized my identity does not exist in a silo. And when I speak on being Palestinian, I'm not only speaking for myself, I'm speaking for those who couldn't, who can't, and haven't yet. So I continued. The Palestinians in Gaza are my family. Its children, my children. It's women, my sisters, it's men, my brothers, and I refuse to stand by as generations of my people are wiped from the earth. I refuse to allow history to reduce them to statistics. That day, I crossed the red line and spoke against what the world came to recognize as one of the worst humanitarian crises of our time. I spoke because I realized silence was no longer an option. I spoke because if we don't tell our stories, who will? Being Palestinian is not a headline or a controversy or a debate. It's stories passed down through generations of my people. It's the land my ancestors were forced to leave. And it's a culture that has survived despite every attempt to erase it. So what now? I began my talk by telling you that this red line is all that stands between us and change. And now I want to ask you all, what would happen if you crossed it? Because when we reclaim our identities, when we tell our stories, we are not only honoring ourselves, we're honoring each other. And when enough of us take up this space, the line begins to shift within us, within our communities, within our institutions, and within the very narratives that decide who gets to belong. So I'll leave you with this. What story have you not told? What truth have you been taught to hide? And what would happen if you crossed the red line? Thank you.